Have you ever thought worship was just music? What if I told you that worship doesn't start when the band plays your favorite song? It starts when something dies. Hit follow if you're hungry for more than hype, if you're done skipping the altar and calling it church. Drop a comment if you've ever felt the ache of carrying something to the altar that no one else could see. Like this if the fire's still flickering in your soul. Exodus 27. God says build an altar. Not golden, not glamorous, not something to pose on, something to die on. Acacia wood overlaid with bronze, the metal of judgment, a place to deal with what we'd rather hide, and he places it not in the inner sanctuary, not behind the veil, but right at the gate. You couldn't even enter the tabernacle without facing the fire first. Before communion comes the cut. Before presence comes the price. You don't glide into God's glory, you bleed into it. This altar had horns, strength, it had a grate, separation. It had pans for ashes, tools to handle the leftover mess of sacrifice, because worship was messy. It wasn't polished or sanitized. It smelled like burning flesh and holy fear. It wasn't the end of the service, it was the start of surrender, and all of it whispered a name, Jesus. Because centuries later, another altar was lifted. Not bronze, but wood. Not horns, but nails. Not a lamb from the flock, but the Lamb of God, crucified outside the gate, right at the threshold of grace. So now, no more bulls, no more goats. Romans 12 says you bring yourself, all of you, a living sacrifice. But let's be real. How many of us want resurrection without death? Fire without fuel? We want the glory of Pentecost without the groaning of Gethsemane? We want upper room encounters without upper room obedience? I've done it. I've played the part, worshipped loud, but lived silent. I've lifted my hands high while holding on tight to pride, to secret sin, to fear I refused to lay down. I wanted God to move, but wouldn't let him rearrange. I tried to enter his presence without stopping at the altar, and I wondered why the fire never fell. But here's the thing, the fire doesn't fall on potential, it falls on sacrifice. We keep saying, God send revival, but God's saying, where's the wood, where's the offering? Because Elijah didn't call down fire until he rebuilt the altar, until the cost was visible, until something bled. And I know, it's scary, to lay down what you've clung to for years, to place your dreams, your image, your control, your unforgiveness, your addiction, your agenda on that altar. But hear me. That fire won't consume you to destroy you. It'll consume you to refine you. You don't lose your life at the altar, you finally find it. Because in the kingdom, death always precedes resurrection. The cross always comes before the crown. The altar is still the entry point to encounter. So what if the reason your worship feels hollow is because you've been singing around the altar instead of laying on it? What if God isn't asking for louder songs, but deeper surrender? Don't skip the altar. Build it. Climb on it, let it burn, and let that be where your worship begins again. Tell me, what's God asking you to lay down? Drop it in the comments. Let's build this altar together.